Most people don't stay broke because they make too little. They stay broke because they keep waiting to start. They tell themselves the same lie: when I make more, then I'll invest. When life feels easier, then I'll get serious. When I finally have enough, then I'll think about the future, but that moment rarely comes. Because wealth doesn't usually begin with a big moment. It begins with something small, quiet, almost forgettable, like $100 a week. And that's exactly why people ignore it. Because $100 doesn't feel like wealth. It feels like nothing. It feels too ordinary to matter. People imagine financial freedom as big numbers: $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. They think wealth starts when the numbers finally look impressive. But that's backwards. Wealth doesn't start when the number gets big. It starts when the habit begins. The first $100 matters more than people realize because it creates something bigger than money. It creates identity. It turns you from someone who says they'll invest someday into someone who actually does. And that difference changes everything. Most people underestimate small money because they only respect money when it looks dramatic. But financial freedom is rarely dramatic. It's repetitive. It's boring. It's built in silence. The danger of small money is that you don't notice it. You don't feel the long-term cost in the moment. That's why it's easy to dismiss. But small money repeated for years becomes something people spend decades trying to catch up to. Most people don't ruin their finances with one terrible decision. They do it with small decisions they thought didn't matter. If $100 feels too small to change your life, imagine what ignoring it every single week is doing. That's where the real cost lives, not in one big mistake, in years of delay. Most people think wealth is built by earning more. It's not. It's built by starting sooner. Because time does something money can't. It multiplies. That's the part most people miss. They focus on how much. Wealthy people focus on how soon. $100 a week doesn't look powerful today. It feels ordinary, almost forgettable. But over 20 years? That ordinary habit becomes extraordinary. If you invested $100 every single week for 20 years with steady long-term growth, you wouldn't just save $104,000. You could be looking at over $250,000. Not because $100 was huge, because time made it huge. This is where compound growth does the heavy lifting. The formula looks like this. It sounds complicated, but the message is simple. Small money plus enough time equals massive difference. 10 years of waiting can cost more than most people save in a lifetime. That's the power people ignore. Not the money, the timeline. Imagine two people. Same intelligence, same opportunities, same salary. One starts investing at 25, the other waits until 35. The second person might invest more, work harder, earn more, and still finish behind. Because the first person gave time room to work. The second person waited. And waiting is expensive, not emotionally, mathematically. Every year you delay is a year compounding cannot help you. You cannot buy those years back. That's why the biggest investing mistake isn't choosing the wrong stock. It's waiting too long to buy the first one. People think investing is about intelligence. It isn't. It's about understanding that the clock matters more than the calculator. Start early, even if it feels small, especially if it feels small. Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. Not because the strategy changed, because time stopped working for you and started working against you. The most dangerous excuse in personal finance sounds responsible. I'll start when I make more. It feels smart, it feels temporary, it feels harmless. But for most people, it becomes permanent. People don't wait because they're irresponsible. They wait because delay feels safe. I'll start later feels comforting. It protects you from sacrifice, it protects you from discomfort. It lets you believe the future version of you will handle it better. But later is where financial goals go to die. They tell themselves they just need a little more breathing room, a better salary, less debt, fewer bills, a calmer season of life. Then they'll start. Then they'll become disciplined. Then they'll think long term. But life doesn't work like that. The promotion comes, so do bigger expenses. The raise comes, so does lifestyle inflation. The debt gets smaller. New obligations replace it. The goalpost keeps moving. Because the real problem was never income. It was postponing. People believe the future version of themselves will automatically be better with money simply because they'll have more of it. But money doesn't create discipline. It usually magnifies behavior. If someone avoids investing with $3,000 a month, they often avoid it with $6,000 a month too. Just with nicer excuses. That's why more income doesn't always create investors. Sometimes it just creates better spenders. Without intention, lifestyle expands to meet earnings. The pressure stays, the stress stays, the delay stays. You do not need more money to start, you need less delay. The problem isn't lack of money, it's the addiction to later. That's the truth most people avoid, because it removes the fantasy that one day everything will feel easy. It probably won't. There will always be reasons to wait. There will always be something more urgent. Investing asks you to act before you feel fully ready. That's why it matters. The first investment isn't important because of the amount. It matters because it breaks the pattern. It proves your future is no longer something you plan to care about later. It becomes something you protect now. Confidence doesn't usually come before action. It comes after. You start small. You stay consistent. And eventually, what once felt impossible becomes normal. That's how financial change happens. Not in one huge breakthrough. In the quiet decision to stop postponing. Most people will keep waiting. Most people will keep saying next month, next year, after one more raise, after one more excuse. Most people will stay financially stressed, not because they're lazy, because they follow normal behavior. And normal behavior keeps people broke. Normal behavior says consume first, think later. Normal behavior says look successful before becoming secure. Normal behavior says if everyone around you is doing it, it must be fine. But normal behavior is often the trap. We live in a world where appearances are louder than discipline. People celebrate visible spending. Almost nobody notices invisible investing. Nobody applauds automatic transfers. Nobody congratulates patience. Nobody praises long-term consistency. That's why building wealth feels boring. Because it is. It's quiet. It's repetitive. It's invisible for a long time. There is no dramatic moment where everything suddenly changes. There is just discipline repeated long enough that the results finally become visible. And by then, people call it luck. It wasn't luck, it was consistency. Financial freedom was never really about luxury, it was about peace. No panic when a bill arrives, no fear every time payday gets close, no money anxiety following you into bed at 2 a.m. No feeling trapped by your own life, just peace. Options, breathing room. That future is usually built by decisions that feel unimpressive today. That's why most people miss it. They chase excitement while wealth is built in silence. If you do what everyone does, you'll get what everyone gets. More stress, more pressure, more years wondering where the money went. But you can be different. You do not need perfection. You do not need huge income. You do not need some secret strategy. You need consistency. You need patience. You need the willingness to choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. The people who change their financial future are rarely the loudest people in the room. They're usually the quiet ones making boring decisions over and over again. And 20 years later, everyone asks how they got so lucky. It wasn't luck, it was the first $100. And the decision not to wait,